And now our meeting is being recorded. So welcome everyone. It is September the 17th and it's 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and that means it's time for our much awaited How to Design Documentation with Users in Mind. Our speaker today is David Dick, and here's a little picture of David. As you know, he did the same presentation or someone somewhat like it at our STC Summit in Columbus back in June. It was so well attended, there was a lot of demand for David to then make it a webinar, and that's what we're doing here today. David, you can see from the slide, he is an STC fellow. He's also the manager of the Usability and User Experience SIG. He's a member of my geographical chapter, the Washington, D.C. Baltimore chapter. He's co-author of Web Services, Service-Oriented Architecture and Cloud Computing, I think a Savvy Manager's Guide. That's available on Amazon, and there's a link in our chat if you want to buy it. He also is one of the notebook contributors to our STC notebook, so you can read what he has to say on a regular basis on the STC notebook, and there's a link in our chat window to that also. So without further ado, I would like to introduce David Dick. Everybody, let's see. Before we get started, I want to show you that you can raise your hand. There's a little icon at the top of your Adobe Connect window where you can raise your hand. See, I'm raising my hand now, and then I'm lowering my hand. You can also do cool things like applause, and we like that. You can laugh. You can agree. There are lots of ways that you can interact with us just using your Adobe Connect window. And a reminder that we are recording this webinar, so you don't have to take notes. As soon as the webinar is over, I will get a link to the recorded session, and I will email it to you the same way that we emailed you the link to the Adobe Connect session. All right, that's enough out of me. David, can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to take control of the machine now.
All righty.
Okay. Well, thank you for the introduction. I am thrilled to be here. What Vicki had mentioned is that at the conference this year, I hosted a progression under the same name, and lots of people kept coming to the table, and I'm thinking, well, I'm not giving anything away, so why are they here? And it seems like they were all here because they believed that this was a very interesting topic. This webinar is made possible by the Instructional Design and Learning SIG, and this is a co-webinar with the Usability SIG, which is the first time. And I want to thank the help of Vicki and Robert, Melissa, Jamie, for making this webinar possible. The introduction for today, we're going to have a brief introduction of users' mental models, why we should care about our users' mental models, why they are important, practical approaches, methods to help users develop accurate mental models, and then we're going to close. Uh-oh. Vicki, this is the wrong one. Is Vicki there? We have a problem.
Uh-oh. Tell me what's the problem.
This is the wrong presentation.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Please stand by. This is the wrong one. Yeah. We uploaded the wrong version.
Why don't you want me to go back to the old version?
Yes, please.
Okay. Let's see. With the ugly slide. Is this right?
There we are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so all good presentations tell a story, and this webinar is about products and services and how we need to educate users to use them well. Now, if there's something you don't understand or would like me to clarify, please enter your question into the chat box. I want to begin with a brain teaser, and the question is, what methods would apply to educating a person about a tablet? And you might know a friend or a relative who recently purchased a tablet and asked you for help using it. Now, if you know the answer, please keep it to yourself because we're going to return to the question at the end of this webinar. Now, we're broadcasting to different regions today, and you are either still waking up, or it's midday and you're half awake, or it's nearly the end of the day and you're ready for that 6th cup of coffee. So if you have entered your name, you are likely to be called upon to answer a question. If you've entered an alias or the name of an alter ego, you are still likely to be called upon to answer a question. So please pay attention, ladies and gentlemen. What are mental models? We all have ideas about how something works. And better yet, we all have ideas about how something should work. And these ideas are based on our previous experiences. When products work the way we think they should work, we can use them successfully. When products don't work the way we think they should work, we get frustrated because we can't use them. So how can writers design documentation that addresses the gaps between what the users know about the product and what they need to learn about the product to understand how to use it well? Cognitive psychology refers to the way we develop an understanding of how something works as a mental model. And we develop mental models by observing what happens with a process and drawing conclusions about how the process works. So here we are. These are common everyday products. You've probably seen them. If you are old enough to remember what a phone used to look like, so there we have this phone. Now everyone learned how to use a phone by observing somebody else use them, I guess. Is that correct? I learned it by watching my mom call my grandma. And after a while, I started calling my grandma myself. So I learned how to use the phone by observation. And then one day, I bought a cell phone. And I learned to use the cell phone by watching others. There were a few basic things I knew how to do, like type in the numbers. But there were other things I had to learn, so I asked somebody. Now, what happened from the time that I bought the cell phone to the time that I bought the smartphone? Well, we all know the smartphone's all full of new functions and features. So again, I had to ask someone. But then not only did I ask someone, I bought a user guide. You know, iPhones for Dummies. You probably remember that one. Or I went to the store, the Apple store, because I do have an iPhone, and I asked for help, and someone helped me. I also looked at tutorials. So these are all the things I did on my own to try and figure out how to use the smartphone. Now the next what happened is the typewriter. Is anyone here remember what a typewriter used to look like? Well, there's a picture of it. It had no electricity, and you had to type really, really hard and really, really fast, and it was really, really terrible to use, but people did use them at one time. Then the jump happened, and this was frightful for so many people, is the IBM Electric came out. And although people knew how to type on an old typewriter, like the old Selectrics, Royals of the good old days, people had to learn some new tricks and new things to type on the electric typewriter. And then I don't have a link to it, but there was this big quantum jump between the typewriter and the personal computer. So what happened? So we're all back to the same square. Well, we got the keyboard, so we got that matches the typewriter, right? And we could type, but then something was new. There was a lot of applications that were built into the computer that we had to learn, literally learn something brand new. That was a long time ago, I bet you. And we don't have that worry anymore, do we? And for the longest time, it was okay to use the computer because, you know, we had developed a lot of understanding, and we developed this process of how we could figure out how to do new things with the computer, and then something happened. The tablet came along. Okay, we're back to square one. Now what do? Well, we had to relearn everything that we knew about everything else because the tablet presented a new user interface. Well, again, we asked a friend, I got this tablet, can you help me? And I would like to take a picture. Could you help me explain how to take a picture? I know it's here somewhere. Or you want to learn how to download a book and read it on the tablet. So there was all of these new things. But there are times when we have this understanding and it can easily transition to something else. Now these are a number of products that we know, we're all familiar with them. There is a bicycle. Now, if you know how to ride a bicycle, do you know how to ride a motorcycle? Does anyone think if you can easily ride a bicycle, can you ride a motorcycle? Start typing. Come on. Let me know how easy it is. Is it really, really that easy? Would you require, there you go. No, it's not. Why? Why isn't it easy? Well, I mean, it's got, look, ladies and gentlemen, it has 2 wheels. It has handlebars. It has a seat. Oh, wait a minute. Take the seat. Oh, it's heavy and scary. Oh, I see. You have to have core skills to balance. Wait a minute. But I have the skills to balance on a bicycle. What is different? Oh, wait a minute. There's an engine. I don't see the brakes. Oh, wait a minute. It also has a clutch. Oh, look, it is different. It's not the same. Okay, my mental model, my understanding of how to use a bicycle will not help me to ride a motorcycle. That's pretty bad, isn't it? That is a true story. Once upon a time, I really wanted to have a motorcycle. Oh, so bad. And again, I applied this understanding. Well, I know how to ride a bicycle, Ma, and I have a motorcycle. And she went, no, you can't have a motorcycle. You're crazy. You're going to kill yourself. And, well, I never got the motorcycle, so she let me use her car. That's another story, and it's another webinar. Okay, here's the next one. If we know how to fly this little airplane, can we fly a jet? Okay, you see in the right, there's this beautiful jet airplane. No. Why not? Wait a minute, ladies and gentlemen. It's got to be the same, isn't it? Isn't there anything? Well, maybe there is. If I know how to fly a little airplane, there might be something. They're way too complex. Oh, complexity, huh? So I don't have an accurate. I can't develop a my mental model of flying this little airplane won't help me to fly a jet, so I probably have to take training, right? I'm going to have to go to school. I'm going to have to go to fighter pilot school, maybe attend Top Gun. I'm going to learn how to fly a jet because it's not the same. Maybe a little bit. Just one a little bit? Probably not. They're scary. Physically demanding. Necessarily trained criteria. Okay, here's another one. PowerPoint. Now, everyone knows how to use PowerPoint. Everyone on this list here knows how to use PowerPoint. If you know how to use PowerPoint, can that make you a great presenter? Oh, Donna said no. Now, wait a minute now. Ladies and gentlemen, I know how to use PowerPoint. I do. And I think I'm a pretty darn good presenter. But isn't there a little bit more? I mean, I know how to put it on the machine. No, well, there's some other skills. You see, PowerPoint is just a tool. Presenting in front of an audience, that takes other skills. So that's not, I can't apply that model. Just because I know how to use a tool does not make me a wonderful presenter. Likewise, riding a bicycle doesn't mean I can easily just get up on a motorcycle and start driving safely. Or flying a little tiny airplane doesn't mean I'm going to be Top Gun. So there are times when mental models work. Your mental model, your understanding of how something works in the process will help you to use a different product and service. What do we do when we're confronted with something new? Well, sometimes we ask our friends, can you help me? Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you, Vicki. I am slightly, but don't mention that. Sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, when we're confronted with something new, the first thing that happens is frustration sets in. Now, if you're anyone out there who's listening in today who's ever tried to enter the longitude and latitude in a GPS while you were driving 70 miles an hour and realized it ain't gonna work, and you call your helpline and he doesn't know either, it can be a frightening thing when you're confronted with something new and don't know what to do. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so what we're gonna learn today is some of the methods that we can help users take what they do understand and try and teach them how to do the next best thing. And if not, even if you're confronted with something that you just don't understand, well, maybe we're going to talk about how can we get there? How can we bridge the gap? Because bridging the gap between what I know and what I need to know is what we do best as technical writers. And one of the things that we're going to learn today is that it's not all about the written word. Although it is, but it's not. Let go of the words, as Jenny Reddish says. Let's just free yourself, because there's other methods besides typing it into some kind of paper document and throwing it into the wind that we're going to educate people. You see, because we develop mental models by observing what happens and drawing conclusions about how something works. We're constantly watching people. And the best part about learning is observing. Now here's something, I want to bring this up because this is quite a metaphor for mental models. What do you do when you shop? Now many of you learn to shop because you went with your mom shopping at the supermarket and you had the little mini carriage, your mom had the big carriage, and you watched her put things into the basket. And as you got older and you rode in the basket, you did what your mom did. You took things off the shelf and throw them into the basket because that's what your mom was doing. Now, if you went shopping with your father, you probably did what I did, is that you had an idea of what you wanted. You went into the store, you got what you wanted, and you got out. But there's a lot of other things that happen when we go shopping. We have 3 skills that we develop. We browse, we compare prices, and we check out, we tag. These are the core processes. I've watched people do it. Do you all agree? Yes. This is it. This is the simple process. So when we go into a store, we go through all the aisles. We have an idea of what we're looking for, but maybe we don't. And then suddenly we're confronted with different items of the same, but not the same, so we start comparing prices. And we start looking at the ingredients. We start thinking about, is this better than the other one? Then we check out. So we're either going to pay, when we check out, we're going to pay in cash, we're going to have a debit card, we're going to have a credit card. The basic fundamentals of shopping is browse, compare prices, and check out. That's what we know. We've learned it. We're comfortable with it. And here's the mental model. You enter the store, you browse, you compare prices, you buy nothing, you leave the store. So maybe you're going to ask questions and still buy nothing and check out and leave the store. Are you ready for what's going to happen next? Oh, shop online. Is it the same? Isn't shopping online the same as going into a store? I would say so, but there's a few different things that happen. We enter a website. We browse items. And now if you've noticed that some of the nicest websites allow you now to just scroll through different items that are somewhat the same that you've looked at before. Online shopping allows you to compare prices. And just like when you're going to the store, you can buy nothing and exit the website. The difference is here when you're shopping online is this feature that you can look at customers' comments and reviews. And those are really helpful, aren't they? Because sometimes you have this idea of a particular product you're going to buy. It's in your mind, I want that product. And someone says, oh, no, you don't want that. It's terrible. It's a terrible product. Don't waste your money on it. And you go, ooh. And then you go, then suddenly you notice there's another product that's being proposed to you that's quite the same, a little bit different in price, in design, and you decide, ooh, I'm going to take that one. You check out. And then we add the new one. As we check out, we decide if we want to have it shipped. So we have a new process. It's called shipping. And then we exit the website. So here's our mental model. On the left, we have shopping in the store. And on the right, we have shopping online. All agreed? Now I just want to, let me go back to this. Oh, I just had this thought. Ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at the shopping in a regular store and online. What happens when your online experience isn't like the model you have in mind? Do you have any thoughts about what would be a successful online service and why it wouldn't be user-friendly? Because it doesn't match this kind of mental model. It doesn't match this process that people have in mind. And a lot of times a successful online e-commerce experience is bad because it doesn't match the way people have assumptions about how it should work. So, Jacob Nielsen, a renowned expert in usability, writes that mental models are a key concept in the development of instruction, documentation, tutorials, demos, and other forms of user assistance. Now, technical writers like you and me, we understand the value of mental models because it helps us to identify important concepts that help end users bridge the gap between a previous design and a new design, for example, software. So yes, they are important because usability of any product is tied to the extent to which a user's mental model matches and predicts the action of a system. At one time or another, we read catastrophic failures of e-commerce websites because they didn't match the way we typically would use such a website. And ideally, the interface design is consistent with people's existing mental models of computers, the environment, and everyday objects, which makes sense to design, doesn't work like we think they should work. For example, it makes sense to design a calendar program that has similar functionality and appearance to notebook calendars, you know, the paper ones, which everyone is familiar with. But when a user's mental model doesn't match the design of the product, the user becomes frustrated, confused, bails out. You see, we are in a competitive market. We can't afford to ignore involving the users in design decisions. So if our product is our brand and our product fails to satisfy users, that failure affects our reputation and costs us money and lost revenue. There are a lot of practical approaches to design documentation with users in mind. Do you have any idea of what they could be? Sketching. Sketching, you've heard me correctly. Sketching, drawing. In the very early stages of design, invite users to explain their understanding of everyday visual element of the product. Because if their explanation doesn't match the design and the design doesn't match their understanding, then you have identified potential problems that should be corrected in a redesign. Sketching is fun because if you miss the concept, you just tear it up and start again. Yes, you can use a pencil. You can use a pen. Uh-oh. I don't want to give any clues out because paper prototyping is another opportunity. It's quick and easy. It's a quick and easy way to render examples of how a product will work. And it shows, you can show it to users to get their immediate feedback. And again, because it's all paper, you can just tear it up and try again. But there's a drawback to paper prototyping because there's other better methods for designing things that don't involve the effort of cutting paper. But you know what? I put this in here, and I'm talking about it because it's one of the many methods. That's right. It's one of the many methods. So we got sketching, we got paper prototyping. These are all ways that we're just going to use to get an understanding of what's in the user's head. Mind mapping. Why would I associate mind mapping to a user's mental model? Well, guess what? Mind mapping is a graphical way to show relationships of concepts. And mind mapping can be used to provide a visual representation of the tasks and decisions to perform a task. Yeah, mind mapping. And you know what's really fun about mind mapping is that you can throw this on a whiteboard and ask users to participate. And then you start getting this, you start building suddenly the association of, for example, online shopping. So you're doing this, and what are other things associated with that particular task would you consider? And again, it's just another method to gather an understanding of what the user is thinking. Usability testing and thinking out loud. When users verbalize what they think, they believe, and predict while they use the system, product, or service, you can piece together much of their mental model. Observing users is more reliable than relying on what they say they do. And you can observe how and where they get answers to questions and how they overcome obstacles. Have you ever tried usability testing and thinking out loud? Well, I will tell you this, that if you are confusing user acceptance testing with usability testing, you are solely delusional. And if your manager assumes that user acceptance testing is the same as usability testing, he's delusional too. So you're all nuts. Well, the good news is you are attending this webinar, you're being educated, and you know the difference now. So you can say usability testing is not the same as acceptance testing. No, no, no. And this is why. Card sorting. Now, a lot of you are familiar with card sorting, aren't you? Card sorting, again, it allows you to gather an understanding of the word, the association that people are making with either a term or a process. And it's really fun because you can just write these cards out and throw them on a table and let people kind of like assemble them together. This is also good on another webinar I'm giving soon, is information architecture. Oh yeah, card sorting. I will share with you that there's this particular SharePoint library I'm responsible for, and one of the folders is named Governance. And I thought, governance? Oh yeah, governance. It's policies, aren't they? Yeah, it's policy. Yeah, I said, yeah, it's policy. And then I open up the folder, and it's just all different documents. I was like, there's nothing here about policy. But who am I? I'm just a technical writer. Well, that's okay. That's another story, and I'm in the process of fixing that too. Now, here we come to the meat and potatoes of this discussion today. When you see users struggling to understand the process for using a product, offer them different opportunities to find the information they need. What kind of methods do you think I'm going to show you right now? Do you have any idea what's coming? No. Marketing brochures. Oh. Marketing brochures answers questions about the product in a logical sequence. And it follows the reader's train of thought. And the best way to start is by analyzing with what users already know about the product or the service, and then assess the order in which their questions will flow. And a good way to organize your points is to write down the questions you think potential users might have and the answers your brochure might supply. And then the information would also appear in the product's website under product name and frequently asked questions. Marketing brochures. Yeah. Have you ever thought about the importance of changing the brake fluid in your car? I thought it was a come on until I read the brochure at my dealer's store, and the dealer's got all of these brochures about all of these different kind of like brake fluid, and why brake fluid is important to be changed because it loses its velocity after thousands of miles and it breaks down. I didn't know that, but thanks to the marketing brochure, I'm an educated person. Have you all thought about retirement? Didn't know where to begin, what to do? Your bank has brochures about its different 401k offerings and its retirement plans. Tips for safety behind the wheel offered by AARP. Anyone interested in DirecTV? Well, there's a marketing brochure about it. User guides. You're probably thinking, where did you find these user guides? Whoa, that's me. I'm out there looking for the good stuff. User guides are useful for users that like to read. And a person who will go to a user guide really doesn't want to know the entire story about how a product works. They will look through, either going to flip through the user guide looking for key topics, or they're going to go through the table of contents, or they're going to look through the index. But the good news is that the ideal user guide identifies the important high and low processes that allow the reader to develop an accurate and useful understanding of how the product works. And if you follow agile methodology, then writing a user guide is very easy because you can write the user guide according to the user stories. You know, isn't that a tip? Quick reference cards. Few people really want to read a book cover to cover, and when they only want to learn just how to perform a few key tasks. A quick reference card gives an overview of the program and instructions on how to perform a few key tasks. For example, create, edit, delete. That's all a user really wants to know, right? If he wants to know all the details, he can go to the user guide. The user guide a user can always refer to the manual for the detailed information. A quick reference card is an ideal takeaway from any kind of training course. You've heard it here, but does every training course offer you anything like a quick reference card? Nah, sometimes they'll just give you a big user guide and you take that home and you go, Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Oh, Amy likes the guide about panhandling. No, wait a minute. Just for the sake of Amy, I'm going to tell you that it's not panhandling, it's handling pans. If that was what you wanted to learn, I don't know where you're going with that, but thank you, Amy. Panhandling. Help. You are likely to find help in most programs and browser-based applications. But for help to be useful, it should allow users to search topics for individual tasks as well as patterns between common tasks. So what would you probably be thinking about is the card sorting. You know, like you're looking for key terms and terminology that people would commonly enter into the help in order to find the answers they're looking for. So there is common sense approach to designing help. I mean, really good help. Instructional videos. Now, there's a reason why I took this picture, because I used to sit in that audience, not dressed like that, and watch instructional videos. I was in high school. Instructional videos were helpful to reinforce key concepts about how things work in a visual and memorable way. Back in the good old days, we didn't have instructional videos. We had instructional movies. See, but it's all the same thing, right? Now, for videos to be really helpful, instructional videos and stuff, they need to be 2 minutes or under, and you should strive to make your content as short and punchy as possible to guarantee the highest engagement. If your video is 30 seconds or less, it's likely that most people will watch it all the way through. 30 seconds. About 3 minutes. 30 seconds? Too much, too long, too short? Well, understanding the key thing you want to take away from instructional videos is that for the benefit of people that don't want to read, and for the benefit of people that learn better with an instructional video, there's also a psychology behind this, is that you don't want to make the video several hours long. What I'm trying to tell you is make it short and sweet. Make it very task specific, and make it fun and educational, because fun, educational is what people remember most. And people don't remember stuff that's boring. Okay. Involve users early in the design process. You can take a huge risk to wait until training day to verify design concepts, which I have seen happen numerous times. I can tell you a story that I worked at this one important consumer protection agency, and we had spent many months designing this tool that automated a form, the entry of a form that used to be paper. Now it's all online. And the first thing that I saw about this was, well, besides we're having user acceptance testing and not usability testing, although we were following the agile process, and we had this, like every so many weeks, we had this presentation where you brought in the project stakeholders, and we went through all the steps to fill in the form. Sounds pretty good, right? Well, it turns out that when on training day, we're showing this product which is rolling out in just a few days to the entire user community, people noticed that the workflows that we had written were not the same ones that they were using. Because it turned out that we didn't know, and we didn't know because we didn't ask, is that each division within this agency had their own workflows. So they hadn't made the effort to standardize workflows for approving forms. Everyone had a different thing. Isn't that funny? So the thought was, instead of standardizing the approval process, they created separate approval processes for each division. Pretty nice, huh? Well, anyway, if the product owner doesn't want users involved in any aspect of development, get it in writing. If on Judgment Day the product goes live and users complain that it isn't working to their expectations, you have something to fall back on if the product owner files a protest against your company. Isn't that called liability? Yeah. Okay, what happens to change a user's mental model? They need to learn something new. Is that a bad thing, or is that a good thing? I'm thinking it's an okay decision. You have to learn something new. But then you need to understand why something isn't working the way it's working. Sometimes we don't take the time to learn anything new about the stuff that we're using on a daily basis. That's terrible, because we're trying to make split decisions based on that little mental model we had a long, long time ago. But it has evolved. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not using an old IBM typewriter anymore. We're using a tablet, and it's all different. So you have to be open, not only to yourself, but to the user, that the way users use something in the past is not the way they're going to use it in the future. So given what we know heretofore, this is a list that I have compiled, and it shows the situations, the audience, and the documentation types. And we're going to go walking through them. And please, please jump up if you agree, you don't agree, and what would you do differently? Audience participation is required in this. If you have a new product, your audience is a first-time user. Would it be okay to have a brochure, a quick reference guide, instructional video, user guide, getting started? If you have something about a product that doesn't work, and the target audience is all the users, you might want to consider an instructional video, help, and a user guide that has a troubleshooting section. If you have a situation where it's all about error messages, and the audience is all the users, it might be appropriate to have an instructional video and a user guide with troubleshooting. And last but not least, how do I, okay, ladies and gentlemen, throw me an idea. How do I blank? Someone's cut. How do I blank link to videos and other, let's see. How do I create a parking permit? Okay, let me go back, press the wrong button. How would I create a parking permit? Would it be a quick reference guide? You could have an instructional video. Could be help, user guide with frequently asked questions. How do I know which? What do you think? Are these all-encompassing? Maybe yes and maybe no. Because the best part about all of this is when you're dealing with users and trying to get an understanding of how they do things and why they make decisions the way they do. You can't really think that one way fits all, because everyone is different. Everyone is different in the way they think and the way they approach a problem and the way that they come up with solutions. No one is the same. Now, I've talked about documentation, which pleases every developer and designer listening to this today. But now it's time to shift attention to the product itself. Users are looking for consistency. Show users something that they have never seen before or confusing to them, and they are certain to become confused. Alleviate the confusion and be consistent. Notorious for inconsistency are field names, buttons, and other contents of a drop-down list. Whenever you develop a new product or a service, tell the users about it. Magazine articles are great, and if you are someone like me, I like reading magazines because they're quick, they're simple, And if there's a new product or feature coming out, I get an understanding right away. Hey, iOS 9, I really should have loaded that onto my iPhone today. Well, I did. But guess what? Now it's working differently than before. But the good news is that there's an article that I've read that explains all the new features and functions, and those are the ones I need to concentrate on. If you want to help user developmental model, advertise on your company website telling them about this new thing. Send notifications, email, blast, let them all know. Trade shows and corporate events, these are all wonderful opportunities to tell the users about the new thing. And they're great opportunities, like you see at the annual summit, for people to test out new things. If you design with the users in mind, your design should achieve the following. It should be easy for users to determine what actions are possible at any moment, make the invisible visible, and eliminate any opportunities for error. I'm going to make a pitch, ladies and gentlemen. I don't get any money for this. Here you go. A good way to enhance your skills of writing manuals, quick reference guides, quick reference cards, help files, and instructional videos is to serve as a judge for your local chapter or an SDC competition. I personally value serving as a judge, and I've done it several years in a row because I get to see what other companies are doing, and I get to pick through and analyze why it's working so well or why it's so poorly designed. And that's a wonderful thing. And the lessons I've learned are priceless. And one of the fundamentals that you get a big kick out of is providing comments and suggestions for improvement that actually lead to the improvement of that product and makes the company very, very happy. And there are more situations that I have seen in my career as a judge than I can mention right now. But one of the most profound is a website that was designed by two tech writers who are members of the STC at the Los Alamos factory. And they redesigned this website based on the comments and the suggestions that came from the local chapter and came from the international summit, as you see. And the changes were so significant that the numbers of complaints had just dropped from so many to so few. And the management was so thrilled about this redesign that the both writers went to the conference, all expenses paid. That's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Final thoughts. Be careful not to allow your documentation into tutorials to be a solution for poor product design. Work with designers to simplify the product. Donald Norman writes in The Design of Everyday Things that design should achieve the following. It should make it easy for users to determine what actions are possible at any moment and not possible due to constraints. Make the invisible visible, including the conceptual model of the system, alternative actions, and the results of actions. Make it easy for users to evaluate the current state of the system. Follow natural mappings between intentions and the required actions, between actions and the resulting effect, and between the information that is visible and the interpretations of the system state. Eliminate as many opportunities for error as possible. Simply stated, the design should help the user to understand what's going on and help the user understand what to do. The design should be so well done that users don't need to rely on documentation, but to learn. But that can't happen without your help. You see, we can make logical assumptions about how something works, and we can build confidence and competency, rather. And this can be done and achieved by providing cautionary notes, notifications, and prompts. So what do you think? You see, ideally, the user needs only to walk through a process once and commit it to memory to keep the process simple. In the real world, however, your usable documentation reflecting on the user's mental models will help the users to successfully use it. Now here is a number of recommended readings. Donald Orman, he's my favorite, Design of Everyday Things. Jacob Nielsen, Mental Models. And Mary Jo Davidson in her paper, Mental Models and Usability. This is a good reading. Please take the time to read it, as I did. Now we're back to our brain teaser. And here's the brain teaser. The question is, we're nearly finished. What methods would you use to educate a user about a tablet? And the answer is all the methods presented today. Remember, everyone's different. Everyone learns differently. So don't assume that everyone will read the user guide. If you design with users in mind, you can provide multiple ways to learn and how to effectively use products and services. Questions. So that concludes questions, ladies and gentlemen, before I wrap this up.
No. You're not getting out that quickly and easily. Hey, we have a couple of people that want to go back to slide 36.
Let's go to slide 36.
Yeah. There we go.
Here we are, slide 36.
So Denise and Donna, you guys want to unmute yourself and just help us understand, maybe we can talk a little bit more about this information?
I just wanted to see this again because it looks like something I can take away from this and apply to what we're working on. Although we don't do software, we do office procedures or processing procedures. But we're designing a new site for our documentation, and this looks useful.
Oh, thank you. That is very sweet.
Could you talk with us about the Make the Invisible Visible? I'd like to hear more about that.
Okay. Make the invisible visible. There are times when making invisible visible. What I think is important to understand when you're doing that is that if something is very, very complex, that you don't have, that a person, even though it's a complex process or a procedure, that the user doesn't have to touch all of those things to make something happen. Likewise, you could make something very, very complex and keep it that way when it could easily be transparent, so that the user doesn't have to go through all of those steps to get something done. What I was trying to say when I use this term in Make the Invisible Visible is that there are ways that we can simplify very complex tasks so that a person doesn't have to go pressing all different buttons. That person doesn't have to really, really understand a process in order to accomplish a specific task at all. That's why I chose to Make the Invisible Visible. But then it also can be implied to say, make the complex invisible, so that a person doesn't have to go through this understanding of, well, I'm going to throw one at you. How do I enter the longitude and the latitude into my GPS? The thing that comes to my mind is, why was that so important? I mean, longitude and latitude, oh, wait a minute, that's a whole lot of stuff I need to know. This is a whole line of numbers I need to enter into the GPS. Why would I want to have done that to a user? Couldn't I have made that just simple and just say, press a button and this is where I am at any given point in my trip? Does that answer your question? Yes?
Yeah, it helps a lot. That covers a lot of ground. And half the time we're trying to make the visible invisible in some ways because our user interface is so complicated that we want to keep our end users' eyes on the prize. You know, so I'm often thinking about ways to get them to ignore certain things in the UI and just do certain other things that'll put them on an optimal path.
So I really need to see all of that stuff because my brain becomes fried when I'm confronted with so many different decisions, and all I want to do is just one or two.
Exactly.
And well, of course, you're probably thinking, I get it, but how do I convince somebody else? And that's the problem. Because you, as a tech writer, you see it because you're going to have to write the user guide, and you know it's going to be complicated. So what do I have to do to convince the user otherwise? And that is a challenge because you're going to try and convince the guy to say, look, this is a lot of information. Is there anything that we don't need? Is there a way that we could redesign the system that if you want to see these additional things, or if you need to, you press another button? Or how much of it is really, really, really important to the user? And I can only tell you recently I was redesigning a SharePoint site, which comes under another topic of information architecture. And I had to enter information about the actual implementation date and the actual, it was like a start and end implementation date. And somebody asked me, can we capture all of this information? And the form started getting more cluttered. And as it became more cluttered, it became more complex to enter. So although they wanted it, they didn't want it. So I came up with a solution that instead of going through all of this process of entering this information, there was no validity of keeping it or tracking it. I just talked to them and convinced them that the more that we have to enter, the more that we have to track, the more complicated it does to enter this information into the form. And they all agreed we don't need it. Although it was important to have. But was there a way for me to make it invisible? And the answer was yes. So that's
brilliant.
You can hide stuff. I mean, really, you can, because they don't need to see it anyway. But then again, people will say, but they need to know all of it.
Well, they need to be able to get at it, and that's a little bit different than knowing it. So, yeah, that's our constant challenge. Thanks.
Hide it. You're welcome.
Yeah, I wish we could. Thank you.
Well, that's why I had mentioned about the usability thinking, usability testing thinking aloud, because I've seen it, and you might have seen it too, that when a person is talking, saying, I'm doing this, their fingers are doing something else, and you're going, whoa, wait a minute. You're telling me this, but your hands are doing something else, and they go, oh my God, and they're screaming and hollering, stop that hand. And what's funny about it is it's because their mind is thinking something, which is programming the hand, but their mouth, which isn't connected to their brain, is verbalizing another action. And when you can connect both together, you find out that the person's thinking needs to be consistent with what he's saying. That's always fun. Yes, the voice of the customer. Any other questions? You got me. You want to have anything else you would like to talk about mental models? I can tell you that this all started, the origin of this webinar began several years ago. The Twin Cities chapter, Barbara Beersford, whom I met at one of the STC conferences, thought I'd be a wonderful candidate to give a webinar to her chapter. So she let me pick from a list of items, and this was one of them. And then when I started researching about mental models and documentation, I didn't find a lot. I'm not going to say that I found significant. I didn't find a lot, didn't find a little, but this is based on the research that I had done many, many years ago. And then Intercom published it. But I will say this, is that the more that I apply this assumptions and beliefs concept to everything, the more that I can see that if we as we as technical writers and even communicators, those of us who teach for a living, those who educate the masses, can benefit from an understanding of the people in their audience and where their head is at. Because if we don't, then we're just throwing things into the wind and hoping that it sticks, or hoping that people get an understanding of, yeah, the user guide is all-encompassing. When I was at the summit, and I mentioned instructional videos, and when would they be appropriate? And one of the questions was, I said, how would you learn how to change a tire? And someone said, I would Google it. And I said, well, that sounds great. You would Google it. And I said, what if you had a flat tire in the middle of nowhere? She goes, well, I'd still Google it. I said, why would you wait until something happened to get an understanding of basic functions and features of working with your car? And she didn't. She said, well, so long as the car is running and it's running well, why should I worry about changing a tire? Yeah, maybe not. Would it be? Could it be? Is it appropriate to only learn something when you need to learn it? And then there was another gentleman, when we talked about the length of an instructional video, he said, oh, my system is robust, it's big, it's really, really big. And he said, you just can't do it in 1 hour. I said, well, you know, if you take if you look at the understanding of the concept of why so many minutes is more appropriate than another, it's because of users' attention spans. They vary, right? So if you were to teach this big, big, big thing, would you really do it in a long, long, long video? And I said, no, you would do it in little pieces. But he was very insistent, and I just let him alone. But really, you would break it down into small bits and pieces. You would look at the task at hand and just teach that and nothing else. So yes, we are actually scheduled until 3. But unless we're all done, I will let you go. Will Vicki let us go?
Well, of course I will. But first we have to, I think everybody that's still on the call, let's go up to the button in the top and let's give David a big round of applause, if we could. Because I think this was...
I can hear the crowds yelling and screaming.
That's right. They're cheering for more. This was both informative and also entertaining, which is a rare combination, so thank you so very much. I want to say thank you to the IDL SIG and the Usability SIG. This is our very first joint activity, and I think it was a big success. So as we say goodbye, everybody keep your eyes open for your email. I'll send you a link to the recording and also the contents of the chat window. We have lots of good links and URLs. I've been putting links to David's material in the chat window, as you've noticed. So, David,
did you all like it? I mean, we still have 13 people. No questions? You're all happy? Did you learn anything today? Again, I don't want to chase anyone away, but have you ever thought about mental models before, the assumptions and beliefs? Does it all make sense to you why some products are successful, some aren't? Why some people learn faster than others? I personally thought it was great to learn this, and I'm thrilled to become an evangelist, because I don't consider myself an expert, because I'm always learning something new. And the presentation I gave today is unlike the one I gave to the Twin Cities chapter, and also it's unlike the what I presented at the Progression, because I kept coming back and saying, I could cover this and I could cover that, and oh my gosh, I learned something new today, and I want to apply that. But yes, the fundamental takeaway, please all take away, is that there is no one method that fits all, and that's why we need to consider all of these options for educating users. So that's all I have. I'm ready to say bye-bye.
Wendy has a question. Wendy has her hand up. Oh, the bear.
Oh, this is an important picture here. The reason why bears are very upset is they don't like selfies. So please don't take selfies with bears. Bears are intimidated by pictures. They just want to be waved at. So wave at the bears when you see the bears. Taking a selfie with a bear can be very dangerous.
So let's let Wendy have her question before we sign off.
Oh, Wendy, I already know about documentation options. How do you learn about mental models that your user has? The answer is simple, Wendy. Ask. Do you have anyone that you can ask? You just one of the things I had mentioned earlier was the mind mapping. Mind mapping, sketching, and prototyping. Those were the key ones that I had presented earlier, because that's where you get to understand what the user's thinking about, not generally. Tell me more. You don't agree. Tell me more. I'm reading. I ain't going anywhere. That requires access to the user. I've heard, yeah. Well, how do you understand? Okay, so you have users, but you're not allowed to talk to them. I really don't, I'm going to tell you about my own experience, is that you have no access to the user. You can't don't make assumptions if you can't get access to users, and don't assume that if you're talking with someone who claims to represent all the users, that person's understanding of how something works is going to be very, very different than somebody else. And this is truly, I did run into this at another agency where the people who were presenting the system requirements and were explaining what the user requirements were did not actually represent the end users, because they didn't actually particularly know what the people within their own divisions were doing when it came to routing it was an incident form. They really didn't know what those guys were doing. All they knew was this person would receive this form at the end to sign off, but was unaware of the process that was going on inside. And because we weren't allowed to talk to the users, we made assumptions, design assumptions based on what we were told. What happened is that we actually had this big training seminar, and as people came out of, as people felt comfortable to speak to the trainer, they started to explain, well, this is how we do things, and these are the decisions that we're making based on particular incidents, and we didn't know those things. Unfortunately, if you don't have access to your end users, or if your user space is very extremely, you can't. You can't. I even found out you can't even group them, because grouping people into these little boxes is also dangerous, because although you could say novice, intermediate, and super user within each one, within each of those categories, their approach is individualistic compared to the other, but you might get a general idea. But still, Wendy, you still have to go and talk to people. And the only way you could do that is if you snuck into some training courses. You could do a user survey. I don't know if that is appropriate. You could do surveys and ask people. Ask and catch questions. Again, there are times I had mentioned corporate events, just to show up at an event and just talk to people. Ask them, show them the latest thing, and ask them, how would you approach this? And what do you think about when you're doing this? Do you have a support? Me? Do I have a support line? No, I don't have one. I am just an independent guy. I work for a very big agency in Washington, D.C. No, I don't. But if I'll show you, you can write to me at this address, and I will help you answer your questions. Someone asked me to write a book about this, Vicki. I said, no. Someone wanted me to write a book. I said, no. I don't want to write any books about this. So find out what the calls are about. Yes, you can. Thank you, Donna. Donna's jumping in there. Donna, what do you want from me? You've got users. Yes. Again, the criticality of any system, the successes of any system is based on the user, on the wonderful user experience, whether it's good or bad, And because there's so many like web applications out there, if yours isn't designed well enough that users can develop new beliefs and understand, if it doesn't match what they use, they'll go and find something else. So yes, this is all a very competitive field that we're in today. And if your product is really poorly designed because you didn't take the time and effort to do it right, well, you're out of business. So that's all I got. Are we finished, Vicki? Can we say goodbye to everybody?
Yes, we can. And thank you so very, very much.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you to everyone who attended. And thank you to David. All right, I am stopping the